This is the Untitled Car Show, with your host for the evening, Ike.
Silly! It's your day! It's what you've been practicing for!
And Proc.
Hey, buddy, roll your window down so I can ask you about your dead friend.
We hope you thoroughly enjoy the show. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the Untitled Car Show. It's just me, Ike, again today. Today we'll be bringing on a special guest from Mojo Motors. It's a really interesting topic and really interesting person. If you are on opposite lock like I am all the time, you should recognize some of the articles that he publishes. So we'll be right back with our guest for tonight's podcast. All right, and welcome back. I am here with Tristan from Mojo Motors. Tristan, say hi.
Hey.
How are we doing today? So,
Great.
For those who are, unfamiliar with what Mojo Motors is, why don't you give me the, quick, briefing about it?
So Mojo Motors, in a nutshell, is a used car marketplace similar to other websites like, Cars.com, Auto Trader. We do things a little bit differently, and we help our shoppers save money. That's pretty much it. I work for the blog section of the website, as well as the review section, so I get to do all of the fun stuff at work.
Yeah. One of the cool things I like about your site is you can track pricings of cars and everything, like when they go up and when they go down.
Exactly. You can see exactly how much the prices dropped. We have price history on our website, and then you just get emails once the prices drop, so you know when a good time to buy is. And
we talked a little bit before over email about this, and you come from an extensive, automotive background, it seems. A lot of family.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, one of the things I'm fascinated about is you worked at a Citroen dealership or restoration operation in the United States. That's
Exactly. They don't have Citroen doesn't have any dealerships. They don't sell any vehicles in the U.S. But I worked at the biggest Citroen restoration facility in the United States, which was pretty interesting.
But those little 2CVs I have not had. I imagine most of the people listening have not had occasion to drive one of those. I'm assuming you've been in one and driven one?
I've driven so many you would not believe.
Yep.
All different, because they had a pretty long production span, so there's a lot of variations. I got to drive them all, fortunately.
Are they as scary to drive as they would appear to be?
Actually, no. If you get a good condition one from the 60s, which I would say is the best combination of still being vintage but still functional. They've got decent power. I've had one up to 70 on the New Jersey Parkway. And it wasn't as scary as I would believe. But they're some of the older ones from the 50s are definitely scary to drive.
And they're all crank start and all that from.
Oh no, they were all electric start.
And one of them was featured on episodes of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee?
Yes, and that is the scariest 2CV that I have ever driven.
And, of course, that's the one you give to Jerry.
Yeah. I mean, I had worked on that car about a year before I saw it, and then I was like, wow, I actually know this car. I worked on this car. I had no idea it was happening, though.
That's a pretty... up there in the pantheon of, car guy stuff is, having a car you've worked on either be on, Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians Cars Getting Coffee or over on Jay Leno's Garage is kind of up there in the ranks of car fame.
Yeah.
And you had one prep for Car and Driver?
Yeah, I didn't actually work on this car, but I got to be there when it was happening. It was pretty cool. They came through with a Citroen. It wasn't a DS. It was the model that came after the DS, which I might be the CS.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably know this, but it's been a couple of years since I've worked at the shop.
Yeah.
And they decided that they wanted to drive it, and they were driving to some sort of French-owned territory up north. It was a really long trip, and they had bought just about the cheapest car they could find. So we did the best we could, sorted out some leaks, sorted out some electrical gremlins, and that was it. Sent them on their way.
And they're still alive.
Yeah, yeah, they were alive to write the article.
That's all
So
that
that was
matters, I
good.
suppose. So, a
Yeah.
little bit of background. You got a family in the automotive business from what I'm reading, and your brother has a shop.
Yep. Island Sportworks in central New Jersey.
Hmm.
He does Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche maintenance and performance work.
It's very the thing I find interesting is like coming from this background, you found yourself working over at a site like Mojo and doing all the car reviews. That's got to be close to a dream job of what you're doing over there.
I really love what I do here. It's a pleasure every day I come into work. And people don't believe me that I really like my job this much, but it's just, I mean, how could I not? Getting to work with cars, getting to write about cars. It's been great. I've been here a year so far, and I'm loving every minute of it.
I bet. What's the best car you've had occasion to drive over there? Your favorite?
Favorite?
It's always a hard one.
Probably, in general terms, like favorite, the one that I can recommend every time is the Mazda 6. I think that it's such a good car, especially, I mean, obviously if you're getting one, you either commute often and you have a family or it's not exactly, it's like a practical slash pleasure vehicle. And I think that's what makes it special.
That's Mazda really doesn't build anything bad nowadays. It's not like most people don't build anything bad nowadays, which is kind of like a weird place to be put as a car reviewer. The only car I can ever like tell people to avoid, well, there's two in my mind, and I don't know how you feel about them: the smart car and the little Fiat 500. Like the smart car just rattles and creaks, and I'm looking forward to the new version coming out. But just being inside one of those things feels like a car built from the 1950s, so it doesn't really feel.
Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. And it's not really especially fuel efficient for what it is and how much you have to
Yeah.
sacrifice as far as space and amenities and just, even just being able to talk to someone else while you're on the highway. There's so much road noise, it's almost impossible.
It's got couch caster wheels, and it's louder than hell.
Yeah, I just saw one the other day. I had never realized that they had a three bolt pattern. I was taken back by that.
The next version coming out looks like such a leap forward. Like it looks like the smart car looks like something built in communist era, like Russia or like somewhere Eastern Europe. It just looks small and cheap, and looks like, well, it's a car. I would not be surprised if it was like the exterior was made out of like cotton or some bullshit. But the
Yeah,
next one coming out, from what I've seen, they're gonna bring it out with a manual transmission, which hopefully will be, it's basically a Renault
that's
Twingo.
interesting.
Hmm?
What year is this coming out
I
for?
believe it's supposed to come out in 2016. And
2016. I'll have to look that up. I didn't hear anything about a redesign or anything, but I'm always down to give it a shot. Not there's a lot of automakers today who are making great cars, like Ford or Mazda, and now they make great cars that I would easily recommend. But it wasn't always the case. So if they step up their game, I'd be happy to give it the recommendation.
well, I don't know because it's one of those things. It's based on a Renault Twingo process over there.
Okay.
So who knows? I've heard good and bad things about those.
Hmm. And the funny part is, so smart car is made by Mercedes Benz, correct?
Well, it's
And then you have Mini, who's made by BMW, and it's funny how much better, at least to me, BMW has done, and getting the Mini, refining it, and making it, something worth buying.
well, I think that's one of the sad facts of Mercedes Benz in like the last like 20 years is that they've kind of been exposed. Like they used to be the leader of all technology in vehicles, like the E class. If you want to know what's going to be in your car in 20 years, you see what's in a fully
Yeah,
loaded E
yeah.
class. but I don't know, like their sub brands, specifically Smart, have just kind of like, what were you guys thinking? And I know Swatch was in there at some point, which just seems crazy to me, but that whole,
Yeah, well, I mean, then you have like Gucci with
yeah.
Fiat. You have all sorts of little, collaborations.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
they come and
yeah,
go.
well, that was the other car that I can't really ever recommend anyone. I love driving around the Fiat 500. Have you had occasion to drive one around?
Me either.
Yeah, I've said I've been able to drive one, and they're great. They're fun, even with the little crappy automatic I was, burdened with. But as soon as
Hmm.
you like hear all the road noise and you go, there's doesn't seem to be something quite right with this car. Then when you see the crash test of that thing and the door flies off of it on the small overlap, you can't recommend
Mm,
that to anyone anymore.
yeah, that is not good. The funny thing is, my friend rented one when he was in France,
Yep.
and he said he had a great time. I mean, maybe it's just the atmosphere of being in France in the Fiat, driving through the countryside, but he seemed to enjoy it.
No, I will say it was a blast to drive. It was almost everything about that car was like better than you expect getting into it. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's like just a micro car expectations in America are so low because they've been so crappy for so long. Everything in a car is like, oh, this is better than you would think, and then you kind of get it up to high speed and you go, something's wrong with like the wind noise, and it doesn't. It feels porous almost. And then when you see its crash test, you're like, nope, like that's the end of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
One thing about the citrons that my boss always used to tell me is that they're actually supposedly, and I really have no idea if this is valid or not. Supposedly, the Citroen 2CV is very safe in crashes. Uh, Reason being is that they're so light. When they get hit, they tend to bounce off instead of just get crushed and demolished. Now, if you get bounced off into oncoming traffic, obviously it's not going to work out. But my boss was very adamant that it's a safe car.
well, that's like the arguing that a motorcycle's safer because you just get thrown away from the crash than being stuck in it.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about like car recommendations, I love the article you had. I think it was last week of the 10 new cars to avoid, and
Thank you, thank you. Our favorite, the smart car, was on
yeah,
there.
it was avoid the smart car, get a Spark, which I agree with. Now I'm more of a Ford person myself, so I was a little bit like there should have been a Fiesta in there, but you know, tomato, tomato, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I had put in. I like the Fiesta as well a lot.
Hmm.
Like all new Fords, but I had already had. I felt I had already shown Ford a lot of love on this one, so
Yeah.
I decided to throw something else in there.
Mhm. I, my favorite one of it though is the CRZ. Um, being a nice little car. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about that. And then you're saying avoid the CRZ and go get a Mini Cooper. And your rationale makes sense. It doesn't get that great of gas mileage compared to the Cooper. And the Cooper is
Hmm.
apparently more fun to drive, which I've driven one of those for quite a while, and they are a blast to drive. Um, I don't know, I just great article, and
Thank
I'm
you, thank
I'm
you.
assuming you've driven all the cars on the list.
No, I actually confession. I have not driven all of these
Hmm.
cars, especially. Let's see the new Ford Expedition
Yeah.
with the EcoBoost, and I haven't driven the CRZ either. But I've basically gathered, the general consensus, and I did get to check out the CRZ interior at the New York Auto
Yeah.
Show. But I actually haven't driven one of those. But I've driven the Mini enough to know that that's definitely something that I could
Mhm.
recommend.
Did you actually fit in the CRZ?
Um, I guess I'm used to being cramped. What other people? Because I'm six
Yeah.
two, and just tall and lanky. So what other people may find unacceptable, I'm like, what, this is kind of comfy.
Mhm.
It's more room than I usually have.
The last time I tried to get into a CRZ, I found myself, I'm 6'2" and lanky as well. I just could not managed to wedge myself into that car.
Really, really. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I'm sure it wouldn't have been comfy to drive for anywhere more than a couple minutes.
But it's it's a shame on that too because it doesn't really have a back seat. It's got that weird partial shelf thing, and if they could just give you about 2 more inches of space in that car, it'd be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not gonna have a back seat, at least make the front ones comfy,
Yeah.
right?
And that's the thing I love about the Mini Cooper is the Mini Cooper, being a tall guy, tall guys love the Cooper because it's one of the few cars that's small that actually fits tall people well.
That's very true. Very true. Driving my grandmother's Eclipse the other day, I had to put the seat all the way down, all the way back, and then I still had to throw on a little gangster lean just so I could drive comfortably. I mean, it's the 2003, so it's from that generation.
Yeah.
I don't know why she bought this car, but I know I can hardly fit in it.
Well, the Eclipse hasn't been like redesigned since the dawn of time. It seems. You want to talk about building bad cars still? Like,
Yeah, I know. Mitsubishi is definitely struggling.
which is a shame because I think if they could get their act together and put out a decent, they have a 4 car product line I think at the moment.
Yeah. One of them is was it the MIEV?
Yeah, that little.
So no one's buying that.
Yeah. But I used to live in the town in Normal, Illinois, where they actually had the Mitsubishi plant. And at the end of the year, when the model years changed over, they had so many cars left over that they didn't sell that all the local dealerships had to buy one, get one free for Mitsubishis.
You're kidding
It
me.
was a shame because it was like, if you buy one Mitsubishi Eclipse, we'll give you a second one for free. It's like,
And the sad part is I still don't see that as a good deal. I don't think that's a deal I could do.
the only other car brand I ever knew to do that was Fieros when they showed up used on used car markets around the area. They would do the same thing. Buy one Fiero, get another one free. You're going to need it for parts.
That's pretty awesome.
So let's take a step back here. Let's go over your car history for a little bit. And
All right.
take us through the history. So what was the first car you ever owned?
So first car I ever owned was the Volkswagen Corrado G60.
Mm-hmm.
I was 15, and as you know, I grew up in a family of gearheads.
Yeah.
And at the time there was a special interest in Volkswagen. So I was 15 years old. I had just money saved up from forever. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get a Volkswagen, and it'll be a project car. But by the time I'm 17, project car should be done, and then I'll have a car to drive.
Yeah,
that was the plan. That's not what actually happened. What happened was me and my brother drove up to the worst part of North Jersey, bought this Corrado that had 250,000 miles, bought it in a warehouse where we thought we were going to get robbed, brought it home, stripped it all down, took out all the pieces, gutted the interior, so I basically had a shell because I was really overly ambitious. And then realized that I was screwed and that the car was never going to get back together again. So this took about a year of me realizing how deep I had gotten myself. And I think by the time I was 17, I ended up selling the car to my brothers, and then they just parted it out from there. So I never got to drive it. It was one big disaster, but I learned a valuable lesson from that.
Yeah. Most people wait a lot longer to make that big project car mistakes. You just got it out of the way nice and early.
Exactly, right. At least I can blame it on my youth.
Yeah.
Like I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, it gets to a point where it's like, well, yeah, kids and whatnot, the hell with it. I still need a project car. So
Yes, and I'm excited for future project cars, but it's going to be a while until I get one again. I know it.
Yeah. And then you never got a chance to drive that. So what was the first car you actually were able to get out and hit the road in?
So my first actual car driven on a real road was a 1990 Volkswagen Passat station wagon, automatic.
Yeah.
Which made me very sad because I really wanted a manual.
Yeah.
But it was cool because it got the nickname the Shaggin' Wagon. So everybody knew it as the Shaggin' Wagon. That made it a little bit cooler. But being 17, I was incredibly embarrassed by this car. Faded white. I think when I actually drove it, we had this car sitting out underneath trees for just sitting for several years. So it was covered in like mold. It was white. It was covered in mold and leaves, and all like acorns had fallen into the and clogged the drip tray and everything. And the paint was already so faded that I was like, I don't really care. I took a bucket, I took a scrub brush and a bucket of bleach, and I scrubbed the entire outside. Took whatever was remaining of the clear coat, came off, and I just power washed it because I was like, I do not care about this car. I just want to get everything off, and whatever happens, happens. And you know what? Held up pretty good otherwise.
But I just like flat white, like Passat wagon. I can't imagine being.
Yes, it was flat white afterwards. I had a utter disregard for this car, basically a hatred. I was doing all this in the back of my head. I was doing all this because I was really embarrassed of this car, and I just hated it. I mean, it had a black bumper, which you couldn't really notice, but it also had a black right front fender, so it kind of looked like a cow from one side, black and white spotted. The floor, my brother owned the car before me. He left the windows down during the summer, and a cat had gotten into the car overnight, urinated on the passenger carpet.
Oh,
so when he goes out in the morning, he realized what had happened, and he just took out a pocket knife and cut out all of the carpet. There was no carpet on the passenger floor. One of my taillights didn't work for about 2 months when I started driving, and I just ignored it because I didn't really care. Front windshield was broken. Radio actually worked. I had one speaker. The car overheated because I was an idiot, and I put a water-based coolant in instead of the oil-based coolant that Volkswagens require. So the car was continuously overheating because the fan never kicked on. I really dealt with, I took all these problems. I really didn't fix it. I just dealt with it for like 4 months until I bought my green Toyota Tercel.
It's sad when the Tercel is a step up from.
Really, my Tercel could have been a Rolls Royce for what the Passat was, and I loved that car to death. I should have never sold that car.
Well, how old was the Tercel? So it's 95 Tercel. So, like, what year is this we're talking about at this point?
Wait, what do you mean? The car? Yeah, the car was a 95. So it had it was a 2-door, 4-speed manual, and I think it had 180,000 miles. So average for Toyota of that age.
Yeah. And so you stepped up. Is this still in high school, or did you wait till after high school to get yourself a decent car?
Nope, this was still at high school. Still while I was in high school. This was a few weeks after I started working at Eurocar Imports. Mm-hmm. I noticed that they had this Toyota Tercel on the lot, and it was just so cheap to insure and keep running that we basically used that car. I took it when they sent me on coffee runs. When they send me to Home Depot to get media for the Media Blaster, when they, anything where it's just like you're already dirty, you didn't feel like getting in your own car. It's just like, take the Tercel out. Yeah. And then I was really attracted to it because it had the manual transmission. Mm-hmm. That's really what I wanted. And I wanted something that didn't overheat. So just overall, it wasn't a station wagon. So it was appealing to me. I got it. The other guy who worked at the shop with me, there was only 3 of us there. Mm-hmm. And the other guy had it, and I got it from him. I offered him $1,000 for it, and he was like, I really can't take 1,000. Give me 800, and then promise me that you'll put two new front tires on the front. So I looked at them; they were bald, so that was a good move. He was looking out for me.
Good guy, at least. So that's the first manual transmission car you owned and you drove. I'm a little offended by the dislike of the wagons because I'm a big wagon fan myself. But get over it.
I do like wagons too. I really do. It's just this wagon.
Like, no matter how cool a wagon is when you're in high school, I think it's always going to be it's still a mom mobile.
Yeah, right. I mean, to a bunch of high schoolers, you could show up in an RS6 Avant and they wouldn't care. They'd be like, "Oh, you drive a station wagon. You have your mom's car, dude."
I'm waiting for that to turn the corner because right now everyone's moving out of the SUV and into the little small crossover. So I get the feeling we're gonna be back to sedan and then into station wagon probably the next 15 years is my guess.
That would be very nice. And then you know what? I'll be driving an SUV and I'll be the loser. It's cool though. I don't mind.
It's being different. It's not about being a loser. It's about being different.
Yeah, all the guys on Jalopnik, they're all going to write about driving white automatic SUVs with CVT transmissions and how cool it is.
Well, by that point, everyone might be driving around in an automated car, so it might not even be cool to drive anymore, which means they'll just be talking about driving.
Yeah, it'll be like a self-driving car will actually mean yourself. You have to drive the car. Yeah. That's how it's going to go. And then those will all be the car enthusiasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a scary. Random aside on that. That's a scary thought that we could be, on the verge of the horse went away, gave way to internal combustion eventually, and we could be on the verge of going from driving cars as a form of commuting to the machine does it for you.
Yeah. I mean the prospects are very real, but you know what? As we saw this weekend with the Triple Crown, just because the horse went away doesn't mean horse racing went away. So hopefully we'll still have rally racing, still have NASCAR if you're into that, F1. It'll be okay. I'm not too worried.
I'm not worried about cars going away. I'm just worried that I'm gonna have to trust a robot to drive me around. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of pride at stake here.
Although I do kind of like the idea of being able to go out, go drinking, and come home and, not have to pay cab fare. But
yeah, well, I mean, it's one of the nice parts about living in New York City. Mm-hmm. I don't get to own a car right now, but I haven't owned one for about a year. But, going out drinking, getting a cab home, and then I just enjoy the cab ride, Every time I get in a cab, I ask the driver how many miles are on the car. Is it a good car? And I always try and get different kinds, switch it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, isn't New York all switching over to those little Nissan NV?
It's a NV 200 or 2000.
I think it's the 200 is the small one, and the 2000 is the big one.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I love that. I love that cab. The only problem is that I've only taken it twice, and the one time my driver kept slamming on the gas and then immediately slamming on the brake, and he was doing this just back and forth, gas brake, and the whole time. I mean, it was about 3 a.m, and I had a decent amount to drink, so this was not what I wanted happening at this point. If the cab ride wasn't ending soon, I was going to tell him, listen, dude, you need to let it coast for a little bit. You need to stop hitting the brake.
I can't imagine New York.
Just the frustration of knowing that I could do a better job.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but around here, around DC, we have, cab drivers from everywhere around the world, and I wish we moved to a unified, cab car would be great. But I also wish they could all just agree on how to drive around in cabs, because when you get into that, I will say 99% of the time when you're in a cab, it's great. You got a nice driver. He's probably got some sort of weird-ass music on. Well, whatever. Mm-hmm. At least he's driving decently, but you get I don't know if it's the new guy or the guy who just came over or whatever's going on, but they just do not understand how to drive properly, and they make you want to vomit. A lot of times the problems we have here is you'll be in an old Ford, police interceptor, the leaf springs haven't been replaced and it was new, and the whole back end is, bouncy as shit. So it's well, the leaf springs work, but the struts don't, so it's like a fucking
Yeah, I mean, come on, leaf springs. Why? Especially in New York City, and after the winter we've had, there's so many potholes that I will actually wait a little bit longer just so I don't have to sit in the Crown Vic.
Yeah.
And there's not a Crown Vic cab out there currently that has functioning rear suspension.
No.
It just doesn't exist.
No. Because no taxi cab driver gives enough of a crap.
No way.
So let's go on a little journey here. From you had Tercel, you're working at Eurocar. How do you get from there to where you're at now with Mojo Motors?
So as far as like working,
Yeah, let's do the work first, and then we can kind of do the car history, alongside.
All right. Well, I guess I have pretty eclectic interests. So I took a little break from doing the automotive thing. I quit at Eurocar when I had basically at the end of the summer before I went to college, and I started going to the Fashion Institute of Technology, which I have one more year left there. So for about a year and a half, about 2 years, I just really didn't do anything automotive. Actually, wait, hang on. I'm getting my own history mix. After my first year of school, I went home and then I worked at my brother's shop, Allen Sportworks, and I spent a summer. That was actually a great summer because my dad's body shop is right next to my brother's shop, kind of in the same building. So we had myself, my brother, my other brother, who at the time was partners in the performance shop, and then my dad and his body shop. So we were all getting up every morning from the same house. We had a '93 Camry beater that we all hopped in at 6 a.m. and went to work. And it was a very fun summer.
My family had a '93 Camry back in '93.
Very nice.
When I was, 8, 9, driving around that thing, I'm like, this is a small ass little car. I can't imagine trying to get 3 or 4 grown ass adults packed into that thing. I hope the commute wasn't long.
That's exactly what it was. Luckily, it's about a 20-minute commute, but you can imagine, 6 a.m. every morning, rock, paper, scissors, shoe for who's going to drive that day, because nobody wanted to do it.
The overwhelming memory I have of that car is my parents were so super cheap because they didn't want a Japanese car. So when they got one, it didn't even have a functioning clock. Like, a clock was an optional extra. So my dad super glued a wristwatch to the dash. Yeah. Wow,
that's one way to do it. You know what? He got the job done.
I agree, and that might be where my history of doing stupid shit to cars comes from. Now that I'm thinking of it, but was it beige? Because I feel like they were all beige.
This one was green, actually.
So you had the one.
Green was second to beige, definitely. I'm sure if we went back and looked at the sales numbers, sure green is up there.
So again, this is another example of the contractor who's got the shittiest house on the property, or the bodywork guy who's driving around a '93 Camry.
Definitely. I think my most vivid memory of the Camry is when me and my brother were driving home from the mall just one random night over the summer. And, we get pretty rowdy when we go places together. It just happens. There's really no stopping it. And as we're driving, we have a history of damaging cars. And there was a garbage can, one of those really big green garbage cans with the rolling wheels.
Yeah.
Just kind of pushed out into the road, and I was in the passenger seat, and I looked at Tyler, and I was like, "Get it!" And so he was like, "Okay." So we're doing about 45 on this winding back road, and he drives and he pulls up basically doing 45 as fast as he can past this garbage can, so close that it actually took off the side view mirror. And we were like, we can't stop and go back and get it, and besides, it's going to be obliterated.
Yeah.
So we came home, parked the car, and then the next morning, meanwhile, my other brother, who is actually the eldest one, came out in the morning and was like, and we were all going to work, and he was like, "Guys, what the fuck happened to the side view mirror? We were like, oh, dude, what happened? Oh, someone must have hit it overnight. I don't know. I didn't notice. Like, who drove the car last? Like, oh, I don't know. And eventually, I think a few weeks later, we fessed up, but we never fixed it. We just drove it like that for the rest of the summer.
Why fix it? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, it's either you're going to use the side view mirror or you could just turn your head.
Yeah,
You've got two options there.
You got 4 people in the car look that direction anyway, so what the hell?
Exactly. And you know what? We cared about that car so little, you don't even really need to look.
Good point. There's a car there.
Whoops.
So you're working, you said summers there, and then you're going to the Fashion Institute for the rest of the year.
Yep, that's correct.
And
then while I was in the city, I had retail jobs, which it's funny because just like crappy jobs, and that's about it. I decided that the fashion industry was not for me.
Yeah, I think there's a crossover there. I think just having the aesthetic eye for cars probably leans you to being able to do that sort of thing. Like my brother, who's the biggest car nut I know, he's bachelor's of arts and like did greeting card drawing for a little bit for like Party City, which was a weird career. But I think it's if you have the artistic eye and the car eye, you kind of find yourself wandering throughout that world. I can't draw for shit, so I never even bothered trying to get into that. But
yeah, me either. It's even my stick figures are subpar, I would have to say. Like, I can't even draw things for reference. It's a problem. I mean, as far as fashion industry goes, I mean, I go to school for advertising and marketing, and whether you're selling, whether you're marketing T-shirts at the Gap or you're marketing, automotive, it's really all the same principles apply.
Yeah. Well, it's all, as far as I can see, watching the television, it's all sex sells for the most part. So,
that is true. That is true.
So that you're working there, and then you find your way over to Mojo Motors. So,
so the year goes by at school, rounding out my sophomore year in college, and I decided that I knew I was going to be staying in the city over the summers, so I looked up internships, and I found an internship opening at Mojo Motors, which I had actually heard of before. I had actually used the website, probably one of the only interns that applied who had actually known about it and used it before. And so I decided just to give it a shot, phone interview, real interview, and then got the job.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I was nosing around their website looking at all the little information I could find. You guys have an N64 over there.
Yeah, we do. And we take Mario Kart very, very seriously over here.
I just love the fact that that's one of the selling points on like the list of perks for the job is N64, which you wouldn't think would be a huge, selling point, but it's like, I think you got that targeted right at the right generation. And I think you can't even, again, show my nerdy side again. I don't even think you can find Mario Kart. I think it's selling for like $1,000 on eBay right now.
Well, you know what? We have one totally functioning. You don't even need to take it out and blow it out before you use it. It's good to go. We have our projector screen and we're in our conference room, and we have little Mario parties, if you will.
That sounds like a blast. It sounds like a great place to work, and the website's amazing as well. So,
thank you. As far as our website, it's actually a really exciting time to be here, and there's a lot of things that I can't really talk about, but I will have stuff to share as far as our website. Major things are happening. We have things coming out. As far as our blog and review, we actually just hired someone who's going to be doing video and photography almost exclusively for us. So we're going to start doing more of that instead of just written articles. And so it's a really great time to be here.
That's super exciting. So that's got to be great for you because you got, I'm sure we're going to be seeing you on these videos at some point.
Absolutely.
And like I said, you going through and reading the articles you publish, they're some of the best written and like well thought out articles I think on opposite lock. Obviously, you can get them from the Mojo Motors site, but I find them through opposite lock, and they're some great
Mhm.
articles. Especially like I love that one about the 10 new cars and what to avoid and what to get. And it's a lot of stuff, from my own experience, driving around some of these cars, you kind of get like, you know,
Yeah, you start to get a feel like an overarching theme behind the cars,
hmm
But yeah, I mean, thank you. That was very, very kind of you. And the thing I love about Opposite Lock is that there's just a really great community.
hmm
It's like sometimes after I post something, I'll see that it has 30 comments, and I'm like, people are so mean on the internet. I don't want to go down and read them, but I get through it. Some people are nasty, some people are know-it-alls, but in general, it's a bunch of people with a common interest who are just interested in the subject, and they're just all trying to get the best information possible, and it's actually a really great community,
it is
especially at times.
like nowhere else on the internet because I do feel like it's pretty troll free. It's pretty, everyone wants the same thing. They want to get the most out of it and they want to share their opinions on everything.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And again, I'm just going through some of the articles I'm looking at right now. And have you had occasion to drive a Tesla?
No, I have
Mm.
not.
Have you been in one?
I haven't even been in one, unfortunately.
I had.
I see them, being in
Yeah.
Manhattan. I see them all the time, and I'm always every time there's one, looking extra cleaned up on the sidewalk. I always come by, take a peek inside, just look around,
Mhm.
basically just stalk it a little bit, and it's so beautiful. But unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to get behind the wheel.
I've been over to the DC store. I've been able to be in one. I haven't been able to drive it. I think if you want to drive it, you have to show up in a suit and a tie and talk about
Yeah,
government stuff at
definitely.
some point. But,
You know what? That's something I should do because I know there's a Tesla. I want to say dealership, but I guess it's really a showroom over in Chelsea.
mhm.
And I'm sure if I go over, they'd let me check one out. I should make it a point to do that.
They're great people there. I have yet to be to a Tesla dealership. It's a little too Apple-y, like Genius Bar for me at some points because it's like I don't know, something about the Genius Bar people just kind of gives me the hibbity jibbities. And I get the same thing
Yeah,
over at Tesla for some reason. It's like,
I could definitely see that. But you know what? Like in New York, so many different establishments, and it goes between tech places and all the way down to coffee shops and even laundromats, where it's just everyone copies Apple's themes. So I guess you just get used to it. I mean, if I had $1 for every cafe that had white walls and blonde wood and all that kind of space age themed, I would have several dollars.
well, it's fascinating because no other dealership do you ever go into, and really no other store do you ever go into, where you kind of feel like there's some sort of like weird cultish vibe, like thing happening when you go in there. Like if you join, you're gonna
Yeah,
end up in the cult. Like,
exactly. Like you have to join if you want to test
mhm.
drive. It takes a blood signature, and you know.
But it's fascinating to me too because I think Tesla's behind this. I don't know how many dealerships you've been in recently. They seem to be all the dealerships seem to be like stepping up their game in terms of like the waiting room, like how clean and how like pristine they are recently. Like even so much as like when I bought my Challenger in 2011, like the
Nice.
dealerships. Well, I had to get rid of it. That's a long story. The dealership there was a piece of crap, and then uh, I went back recently because it's a Ford slash Dodge dealership, and they had to step up their game. Like it used to be that like long row of like chairs which are all like bolted together in the waiting room. And now they're offering like iPads and like you can like sit down and there's a coffee bar and everything. And
Wow,
I think that's one of the things.
that's good.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's one of the things I think that's fascinating is I don't know what's driving it. It seemed the only thing I think is Tesla, because if you go to a Tesla space or whatever the hell they call it, it's like going to a Starbucks or going to an Apple bar. And I think if you're going to compete with them, I think they're trying to stay one step ahead of the game.
Definitely. And in general, I just think the competition is getting so much more fierce for for people buying new cars, especially.
Hmm.
And even like Ford, Nissan,
Hmm.
Mazda, they're all getting real. They all have products now that have real chances to be successful in the mainstream market to go up against Honda and Toyota. So if they can bring excellent customer service as
Yeah.
well, that's really good for them.
Hmm. It's weird to see that change, and I think part of it too is like maybe the way they do. I've talked to a couple dealership guys, and they have like weird analytics about it. Like if you get a five, you get X amount of money on this, that, and the other, and it's all sorts of weird conniving. You know.
Oh, I mean, I was my brother works at a Mercedes-Benz dealership,
Hmm.
and he basically told me that he's a service advisor, and they really live and die by their
Yeah.
reviews. If they get a, and then there's also websites like dealerrater.com. I don't know if you know about them, but exactly how it sounds. If it's like Yelp for
Yeah.
dealerships, if you get a bad review on there, it can really affect your business.
Yeah. No, it's true because I live down just south of Annapolis, and I was very hesitant to take my car to the Annapolis Volvo dealership because they had such a bad review on that site. It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
people.
and even even still, it's sad because how many people have a great experience and never write anything, and then how many people have a bad experience and then they'll go on and they'll post their review everywhere they can.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. The good reviews definitely don't get as much time as a bad review, which I'm guilty of that myself. You
Yeah.
know.
Me too. There was a dealership that did some bad things, and I wrote some bad things about them. But it's true. I think it's part of what makes the internet kind of like the environment it is like everyone remembers the negative things. They very rarely remember the positive things. So,
This is
you know,
true. This is
it's
true.
like car history itself. You tend to remember the crappy cars. You tend to remember the ones that didn't work, and you tend to remember, like what went wrong, like no
Yeah.
oil-based coolant or
You
whatever.
you remember when it left you on the side of the road, but you don't remember the year that
Hmm.
that you neglected some maintenance and it didn't give you any trouble.
Hmm. So, what was the last car you had before went totally carless living in New York?
Right. So the last car that I owned was my BMW 318
Hmm.
IS, and like all the other cars I've owned, this has a interesting and convoluted story into how it got into my hands. So basically, I didn't have a car at this time. I had just come home from college and was working at yeah, I know this was winter break in my sophomore year,
Hmm.
and before Christmas, like I was home for winter break, and my brother came home and he had a BMW, the 318 IS, on these stupid. They must have been 18s, stupid law, which are way too
Oh yeah.
big for that car. And chrome with low profile tires. It had chrome, fake Pep Boys chrome trim all the way around the side. No blinkers. No no driver's side door card. It had a rear view camera on the back, but it had, imagine a rear view camera from like '02, where it was just like literally drilled through and bolted on the back with wires. I opened up the trunk, wires went nowhere. They were just sitting there. I doubt it was ever actually hooked up. No head unit, um, no emblems.
Oh, you gotta have the
Trying,
emblems if it's a BMW. I mean,
yeah, no emblems. Or it might have had. It didn't have one on the hood. The one on the back was completely faded, so it was just a silver dome.
I love it when you see that.
Yeah, so he had basically the worst condition 318 IS that you could ever find.
Yeah.
Definitely previous owner. Previous owner was almost certainly a drug dealer. From various contents that I cleaned out of that car, I can say with pretty much certainty.
Understood. If you ever got pulled over and they brought out the drug sniffing dogs, just the residue would probably set them off.
Definitely. I'm glad that never happened to me. I should have done a nice search through that car just in case.
Mm,
But oh
yeah,
well, it's over
you don't
now,
have any
out of
more.
my hands. But so anyway, first thing my brother does, thankfully, is get a nice pair of original E36 M3 wheels, which really set the car off nice.
Hmm.
It was already lowered, but it was fortunately by way of cutting the springs. So car rode great.
Yeah.
Not nonetheless, my brother bought it with the intention of beating the shit out of it. So he would redline it constantly, just not caring.
Yeah.
Burnouts for days. And then I believe I never saw this, but at one point he told me that he jumped it off a curb, the curb outside of our shop. Apparently someone was blocking the driveway, so he was just like, "All right, I'll just take the curb."
Because that thing already sits low enough off. I can't imagine it didn't beach itself.
Exactly. Ooh. Now I remember. All right, so the springs weren't cut. The springs were actually clamped together on one side. I I have no idea how this actually worked. Thinking back on
Yeah.
it, but they had just had this weird mechanism that clamped two of the springs together. So it was kind of like even uneven. The spring was like bent, but
Yeah.
I mean it worked because he drove it like that for a few weeks,
That
and
those things, I know what you're talking about. They're little spring clamps, and they sell them at like Pep Boys or like AutoZone or wherever. But they come in packs of two, and each pack of two is supposed to be for one set of coils. So whoever had the cheap ass like car did one side and then the other side and just called it a day.
oh man, and that is exactly what happened. He definitely didn't get the memo that it was supposed to be two for one. But the sad part is the really sad part of this, and it's part of it. Part of my actions were motivated by the fact that I was living in the city and I didn't have a car, so that I was so deprived of
Yeah.
driving that anything I got in was super exciting to me. So, for everything that was wrong with this car, it was still it actually had a decent paint job, believe it or not. It was hell rot red.
Hmm.
It was two-wheel drive. I mean rear-wheel
Hmm.
drive. You know, 5 speed. I actually fell in love with this car, even for everything that was wrong with it.
It had character, is a good way to put it. I mean, James May once said the gap between driving, a Fiat Panda and driving a Ferrari 458 is but like a mere like crack as opposed to the chasm of like not driving at all. So, you know,
You know what? That I totally agree with
yeah.
that. That makes a lot of sense, and I know exactly what he means. So yeah, I mean, for me to get in this car, I had to beg my brother for months for me to buy this car, and he wouldn't sell it to me out of the fact that he knew how much he abused
Yeah.
it, and he knew how much that it was abused previously, and he really was looking out for my best interests. But nonetheless, oh man, I love this car, and eventually I convinced him, and he sold it to me for $1,000, which basically covered the cost of him buying the car, which was 500, and then him getting the wheels, which were 500. So when your wheels cost the same as your car, and they're not nice wheels, you know what you're
Yeah.
getting.
There seems to be a running theme in your life of people not wanting to sell you cars because they know there's something terribly wrong with it.
Yeah, well, I really, when you're dealing with the sub $1,000 range, you don't actually get that much selection in the cars that you buy, believe it or not.
Good point. As someone who owns a car he bought for less than $1,000. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That So it's funny, like writing articles here at Mojo Motors, the things that I would consider acceptable in a car, like a slight oil leak, yeah, no problem. Just add half a quart every 2 weeks. That's nothing, please. But certain things that other people find just unacceptable.
That I think that's the difference between a car enthusiast and someone who uh, drives a car as like a means of commuting is you're used to something being wrong with it and you can accept the foibles because that's what gives the car character. Whereas like people who just go ahead and drive a car to have a means of conveyance.
Yeah, it's, I think there was an article on Jalopnik like this recently that was like, to non-car people, a car might as well be a refrigerator.
Yeah.
It's an appliance that has a purpose, and that's really it. They don't care about the character or anything else. It's just, how it is to drive normally, and if it just doesn't cause them any trouble, they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, have you ever been around animal rescue people?
No, I have not actually.
Okay. I had a crazy ex-girlfriend who was one of these people, and it was almost like the more messed up and broken a dog was, the more like credit it gave you in the dog rescue community.
No, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think that's like kind of like the car enthusiast. Like you got the two ends. You got the guys who go over towards Lamborghinis and like the purebred cars, and then you got the people who are like, well, it's missing a leg, and its eye doesn't work, but I still love him. He requires eight
And
shots
they're
a
and
day.
they're the ones who have the highest pride of ownership. They love their cars, but with everything that's wrong with them, they don't care.
Well, I think I think buying a car for less than $1,000 is basically the equivalent of like getting a rescue dog. Like I saved it from the crusher. I rescued
Yeah, because I mean, that's the next step.
it.
But you know what? My 318, I basically spent every single dollar that I made the following summer working at my brother's shop,
Mm-hmm.
which was the perfect place to own that car, and it wouldn't have worked otherwise because, at the end of the day, it's just like, hey, man, can I get my own car on the lift and then just work on it? It really couldn't have been any better. But I had put at least like $4,000 into it and got it. I put a lot of work into that car, and I can say that unlike the Passat that I had owned, the BMW was in much better condition when I sold it than when I first got it.
And that's all it takes, I guess. And the 318 is kind of a perfect car for an enthusiast in New York. So
Yeah, definitely,
small,
definitely.
tiny, that's all that. Well,
Yeah, I brought it into New York one time because the rest of the time I just usually take the bus back and forth just because it's so expensive to keep a car in New York. But yeah, one time I brought it into the city, and it was running really well that day. But this was a Saturday. I brought it in around like mid afternoon, like 3 o'clock
mm-hmm.
till like 5, which is basically when rush hour starts. And then driving around, stop at a stoplight. Temperature starts to creep up. Okay, time to get out of the city. So I basically found the shortest route out, and then just booked it as soon as I could out of there.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, Tristan, I think that's about all we got time for today. I want to thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to be on the show with me
Oh,
today.
dude, it's been great talking with you, man. It's been fun.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure on my end too. Come back anytime you want.
All right, we'll definitely have to chat, and hopefully next time I come on, I'll be able to share some new things that is happening with Mojo.
I'm very excited to hear that. Again, Tristan from MojoMotors.com. Go check it out. It's a great site, and I love the little like car tracker where you can see the prices go up and the past history and everything.
Yep, that's right.
It's kind of
Best way to get a good price on a used car.
all right. Thank you so much, Tristan.
All right, thank you,
Have a
Ike.
good one.
You too.
Bye bye.